Hello, Who viewers. Welcome back to Who's Views. And who fancies a chit chat? Tell you something, I do. And I think this one does as well. As you can see, I am joined by Time Lord Victorious himself. It's Emilio. Hello.
Hi JT. Hi everyone. Nice
Oh,
to
look,
meet you.
it's lovely to see you here for Chit Chat. Thank you for making the time to come along and be part of the show. Do you know what I mean? This is one of my favorite shows that we do on Who's Views because I get to talk to a fellow fan about anything they want to talk about. So I'm really pleased that you're here with us today.
Really grateful to be here. Thank you.
Well, listen, I'm going to start with my usual question that I always start with, which is basically, how did you find the Doctor?
That's a really good question because I even have to kind of think back to kind of my how old was I when Doctor Who came back in 2005? I would have been eight, just going on 9. So yeah, I know.
Okay.
But it was actually my brother that introduced me to Doctor Who. So I didn't actually start with the series in 2005. I did in 2005, but not when the series was aired. It was after the first season had ended. My brother got from my dad, who used to watch Doctor Who in the 70s, who were too scared. He was just scared by the theme tune. That's what he used to tell me. The theme tune used to scare the crap out of him. He bought him. I don't know why he didn't get me it. He got my brother it for some reason. He bought him the kind of 2 serials of the first series. I think it was starting with was Aliens of London, and then going through to the Doctor Dancers.
Okay.
So we had those episodes, and my brother was watching it, and I was just quite intrigued by the Slovene, just watching him watching it. I was like, what's this? This looks interesting. So then I ended up sitting down and myself and watching it, all of those episodes. And I think what happened there was the Doctor Dancer, the Empty Child. That was the episode that really hooked me because it scared the crap out of me, but also my brother used to have nightmares about it as well.
Really?
I think
Fabulous.
Scary Who is what really kind of, as a kid, that's what captures you. So yeah, I kind of, that's where I kind of first fell in love with Doctor Who. But I didn't actually start watching each episode by episode until Tooth and Claw started.
All right.
And the reason for that, I can't even remember why, but I just remember saying I need to watch this every week. Was when the 10th Doctor encountered the werewolf in the cage, and his I think any other character on TV would just run away scared. They're the Doctor, absolutely in awe of saying how beautiful this creature is. He's not scared by it. And that was the thing that kind of hooked me. This is a unique TV show. There's nothing else like it. I need to sit down every week and watch it. So from that second series, from that second episode, I started to watch every single one.
Wow. I think you're right with what you say about, Doctor Who needs those thrills and scares because every generation needs that. And Doctor Who used to provide that because, I go back to John Pertwee, and I have vague memories of being scared of the Ice Warriors because they were threatening Sarah. I have vague memories of Bilal and being scared of Bilal at first and then realizing he was the Doctor's friend, so that was all right. And right through to Davros, of course, the big one that sticks out in my memory. God, that really.
My dad, I think, was only two or three, or we're going 3 when Genesis of the Daleks came out, and he still remembers that, and it just again it just the visual just stuck, even at that young age, it still stuck with him. So yeah, totally. I think Scary Who worked, and it, not just for us, as we become fan, but also the general audience. My wife, she is not a Doctor Who fan. She absolutely hates sci-fi and fantasy and all of this kind of stuff. She's much more into kind of, I'd say, more kind of documentaries or reality TV kind of stuff. So we have very different tastes. But even for her, the Empty Child and the Doctor Dancers, the kids with the gaff mark, that stuck with her. So even for the normies, that sticks with them.
That was the magic of Doctor Who, though, wasn't it? Because for the not-wees, as I call them, which is a phrase from Kinder, from Peter Davison, for the not-wees, that was why Doctor Who was always so important in the United Kingdom, because we all knew about it, we all grew up with it, and yes, we had that wilderness period where it was off the air for 15 years, but it didn't really matter. And it was something when it came back, it's still, listening to you and other people, it's great to know that it still had that sort of impact as well. And that, I think, it must have lasted up to today, really.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that we'll go into later, I'm sure, talking about where the series is at currently. But I
You
think
can talk about what you like.
that's definitely one of the things that's missing in not just in this era, but in the Whittaker era. I think the last kind of scary kind of episode, I would say, World Enough in Time, with the Mondasian Cybermen. You know, there was a bit of a kind of slightly gothic horror involved that Moffat did with that in that episode. So I think that's the last time it tried to be a little bit scary. I think the last 7 or whatever years it's been, we've not had anything close to a scary episode, and I think that's a massive problem. I mean, I honestly can't think of it unless you can think of one, but yeah, I can't think of
Well,
one.
I can't comment about the Chibnall era because I refused to watch
Oh
it.
yes, of course, yes, you didn't.
So
You did the
did,
right
though.
thing.
But you carried on. You carried on through
Yeah.
the Whittaker and Chibnall era. You watched them all, did you?
No.
Oh.
After the Timeless Children, I mean, look, I'll be honest. When it got announced we're having a female doctor, I remember I was my graduation the next day at university, and I was in a Travel Lodge hotel, and I just remember going, "God, no, 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 no," like this, because I had a good sense of where it was gonna go. I always felt that the Doctor really is a male paternal character. He was a grandfather. We've been told he was a father. So I just felt a female Doctor was just against the nature of the character. I was willing to give it a shot, right? I think you have to give it a go. You can't be, I think, just say, "Oh, I'm not going to look at it." I think you have to give it its fair crack and see if you can be won over by it. So yeah, and I watched the first 2 series, I would say, just because I'm a Doctor Who fan, and I love Doctor Who, and it's something completely different to anything else on TV, as I said. But then once the Timeless Children happened, and that was really butchered the Doctor's history, the legacy of the show. I just thought, you know what, I'm out. So I didn't watch the Flux series, which I'm very grateful for. I listened to people that were reviewing on YouTube just to see what they were saying about it, but I've never actually watched it.
Okay.
And then obviously we've got the new to RTD one coming back, and there me, somebody who grew up with it in 2005, absolutely loved the RTD one era. Thinking, here we go, he can save Doctor Who, and I guess how wrong was I?
So were you one of these people that weren't on the fence? You were actually going, "Oh yeah, Russell T Davies is coming back to Doctor Who. Everything's going to be okay."
I think our initial kind of reaction, yes. I think once I started to hear more about his politics, and I heard interviews about kind of what he wanted for the next for the future series, around, basically reminding, you've got to make it 2024. The minute I started hearing quotes like this, I start my let's say warning signal started to come up. I was like, is this just going to be maybe another iteration of the Whittaker kind of era in terms of politics over good storytelling, and I guess that's the way it turned out so far.
So you watched the anniversary specials, the alleged anniversary specials?
I did. I was very excited because David Tennant was growing up was a idol of mine. I used to love watching him, not just in Doctor Who, but in lots of other series. And because I always felt he was quite a diverse actor in terms of he can act different roles. He's a Shakespearean actor. I think that's also what made 2005 successful. And RTD spoke about this, I know, in an interview back in, I think, 2009 when he was leaving, and that he purposely went out to hire Shakespearean actors, because to play the Doctor, you need to have range, right? You need to be able to be funny one minute, you need to be a drama the next. So So yeah, I was big David Tennant fan. So very much looking forward to him coming back. To be honest, I think that it was a bit. The only sad thing for me was I was excited, but I wasn't excited as I probably would have been five years prior. Had the Whittaker era not done the damage it had done to myself, I would have been even more excited for David Tennant. But I was excited, but I wasn't as excited as maybe I would have been. Yeah, 10 years prior.
That's interesting because what you're suggesting there is that what happened is he's worn you down through the Whittaker and
Yes,
Chibnall era.
100%. Yeah, I think I just lost. I think you just kind of forced to kind of lose a little bit of interest in the show generally, and you just feel kind of, yeah, as you say, worn down by it. It's not a nice feeling. I'll be honest, because it's a
Yeah.
show that, you know, everyone knows in my family I absolutely love and adore. But I think what was a relief was during that time I decided to really get into watching classic Doctor Who.
Ah,
So that kind of was my saving grace during the kind of 2017 to 2022 kind of period. I mean, my dad did introduce me to, I think, Destiny of the Daleks when
okay.
I was like 11. And I just remember looking at him going, this is too slow. This is too, boring. I was very much, used to that fast paced, Doctor Who kind of episodes. So I don't think I was old enough really to appreciate what classic Who did. So I went back and I started watching kind of sporadically different doctors, different episodes. I would say I fell in love probably most with John Pertwee. I think he's a terrific actor, really held the role with a lot of gravitas. And I loved the Earthbound stories. They're probably my
Yeah.
favorite. Yeah, I love the Earthbound stories. With Unit, I think with obviously the Brigadier, with Sergeant Benson, Mike Yates, that kind of core unit group. Liz Shaw, in season 7, they were a great kind of team, and I just loved the interaction with the Doctor and especially the Brigadier, how he just basically is quite rude to him, but there's a love there. There's like a mutual respect and love between the two in a platonic way, obviously. That I think, it just really encapsulated me, and I started to watch pretty much a lot of the Pertwee stories, and obviously some of the Tom Baker, Sylvester McCoy. I've not touched Colin Baker yet. I probably should give him a try.
Oh, definitely, yeah. So when you were going back to proper Doctor Who, as I call it, because you were disillusioned with what they were churning out today, it was the Pertwee era you started with, was it? And if so, which story was it that you first watched again after that time?
Spearheads in Space, right?
Spearheads in Space. You started with the first
that was
one.
the first one. I started with the first Pertwee one. I would say my favorite of the era is Inferno. I absolutely love Inferno.
Wow. Yeah.
It's great. I mean, I could imagine what it would be like if they had the budget to to do it now. I mean, it would look amazing. Yeah, but I think, again, like you can kind of look over the kind of 70s effects because the storytelling and the characters are so great. And so where maybe my 11-year-old self couldn't do that, now I can certainly look past it and actually really cherish what it really offers in terms of those two things.
So that's the benefit of getting that little bit older, because I maintain that if we could get the figures for the iPlayer for proper Doctor Who, I think they would be very, very healthy indeed. I think they'd be very good.
Yeah, it'd be great to get that.
Well, yeah, it's very difficult, though, Emilio. But I maintain the fact that never mind what all these reports say, that young people have an attention span of 2 seconds or something, and something's got to be very fast and very fast. I think the older you get, the more mature you get. I still say that anybody from the age of about 12 can go back to original Doctor Who and sit down and watch it, because it tells a story. It's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I do believe that even though they may guffaw at the effects and what have you, the fact that the acting is top notch, the fact that the writing is top notch, I think they will get into that, because I really do believe that human beings of all ages like being told stories.
Definitely. But I think even with the effects, you can give it a due. Everyone knows Doctor Who was on not a limited budget, and there's only so much they could do with the effects. They couldn't do what obviously Star Wars kind of changed the landscape when no film came out, and I'm talking to my dad about that. But it's still, it's ropey, yes, but for what it is, it's good, and for the budget it had, they did a great job. So yeah, like it's a lot to appreciate about classic Who. And as you say, it's just serialized stories. There isn't an overarching arc to these seasons, so you're just invested in each story. You've got similar same characters that kind of run throughout it, who you're already invested in, and because the story pace is slower, you can really build on character. You can you just feel everything fleshed out in a way that kind of allows you to really go on that journey. I think some of the issue with New Who has been it moved away from doing two-parters, which I think in modern times it was a good. I think RTD found a balance of having quite a few two-parters in the 13 episode series that really gave you those stories that needed more than 45 minutes to really pay off. Yeah, I think that's the problem. Actually, one of the things I was very pissed off about was that the current series was only 8 episodes and they were still 45 minutes. I mean, if you've got 8 episodes, make them at least an hour long so that you can build it out. Now, but I would probably still argue, even if it was an hour, we'd probably just get it'd probably still be crap anyway.
Don't put me through an hour of those things today, please. 45 minutes felt like weeks in my eyes going through those latest things. I tell you, it was painful, absolutely, as you will know because you've seen our review shows. But don't tell them to do it over to an hour. I couldn't stand too much. The one thing that I get what you're saying there. I mean, the two parters that were in the reboot series were actually very good, and it gave you a sense of that cliffhanger moment that we all grew up with, my generation grew up with. But what gets me is, Emilio, is that you guys will never know the magic of watching a 25-minute episode and it ending, and then you having to come back the week after to see how it would continue over 4 or 6 weeks. And you guys are never going to know what that's like. And I find that really sad.
Yeah, I just can't imagine what you'd be to be left on a cliffhanger every 25 minutes and then waiting to watch it again and then continuing it. Yeah, it's very, very, very interesting. I think it took its audience, I would say, slightly more seriously in the sense that it probably it expected you to be able to kind of, when that second part came in after the first part, to be able to just you've already watched the first part, you can just roll with it. The same with the third part. They would have expected you to watch them. They're not saying, oh, you're a little bit too fickle to to remember things and all of that kind of stuff. So it took its audience seriously as adults rather than trying to treat them, even though loads of kids were watching it, treating them like kids. And I think that's I think plays a part into it as well.
Oh, I'm glad you've picked that up at such a young age that you are, because that's exactly what it did. I mean, the BBC and all television back then never spoke down to its audience. It was there to entertain, and Doctor Who's a great example of that from the original series. It was there to entertain, but yeah, you're right. Millions of kids were watching that thing, and the great thing about the cliffhanger is it would be on a Saturday, and what were you talking about in school on the Monday morning? Oh my God, did you see this thing that was getting Leela? Or what would the Doctor do? Or and when K9 came along, that was a different world. Or Sarah, oh my goodness, what's going to happen to Sarah? And you had that conversation, and you were so excited by the time Friday came, because the next episode was going to be on the day after. But they never did. It was never. I mean, it's interesting that you've picked up on that when it comes to the modern episodes, because I certainly did watching this thing from 2024, this version. I just thought there's an awful lot of assuming here that your audience is thick.
Oh, 100%. It's I mean, but not even just thick, just that they can't think for them, can't think for themselves. That like I think with the Chibnall era, it was spoon feeding you loads of exposition, just basically like rather than showing you what's on screen, telling you what's happening. Again, that treating your audience as thick.
Really?
And I was saying, yeah. I mean, the amount of exposition that came out of Jodie Whittaker's mouth was unbelievable. Like it was definitely not.
Was that because of the constraint of the episode, because it was an hour long or whatever it was, 45-minute long or something, do you think? Or was it generally because the script was shallow, and they couldn't get from A to B without a character saying, "We're going from A to B."
I think, yeah, the latter. I think
Oh.
it's also Chibnall writing. If you actually watch a lot of Chibnall stuff, generally speaking, I'm not going to say for everything, because there's one or two kind of episodes of Torchwood that I like personally that he's written that were good, but on the whole, his writing is shambolic. It's just, yeah, he's not suited to sci-fi writing. He's definitely good at crime dramas, because I love Broadchurch and that kind of murder mystery, which is actually quite funny, because my favorite episode of Torchwood is Adrift, which is where basically a kid goes missing. Captain Jack basically is they've fallen through the rift. They're on I think some island off the coast of Wales, basically, where he's looking after them, people that fall through the rift. And Gwen Cooper is obviously investigating, and doesn't obviously finds out that she thinks something dodgy is going on. She thinks Jack's involved in a bad way, and then realizes that actually he's helping out these people. But it's a very, very emotional episode. It culminates in a really good way. But he's good at that kind of, like people go missing, or etc., kind of murder mystery, that kind of thing. That's his speciality. But yeah, Doctor Who, definitely not. And he even had to cheat to Jay? He went on that TV show on YouTube. I've watched it, where he criticized the old classic Doctor Who.
Oh, that's going back a long time. Yeah. From when he was a young guy.
Yeah, and then you just think,
long time
mate,
ago.
you're an absolutely awful writer. What a hypocrite.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah. What comes around goes around when it comes to that one, because he's never going to live that down.
Yeah.
And I think it's part of the reason he doesn't, allegedly, in my eyes, he doesn't like Who fandom, because a lot of us had criticized him for that afterwards, saying that was too harsh, too much.
100%. 100%. I mean, look, classic Who had his issue in the late 80s. I mean, but I'm quite sad, because I obviously wasn't, was obviously there when it went off the air. But watching season 26, you're like, bloody hell, that's a good series of Doctor Who. It's such a shame that it had gone off the air at that point, because obviously I know there were BBC politics and all of that kind of stuff going on. But it's a really sad thing, because it's a really good series of Who, and the Seventh Doctor and Ace are a great pairing. I think they certainly made the way for modern Who in a way. The Ace backstory around her, her kind of family, and so it was starting already in the late 80s to move in that trajectory. So it kind of, like the foundation for modern Who is that end era, the Sylvester McCoy Ace period. I think I love that period too. It's a great part. But yeah, back to the point and what you said around, treating your audience as if they're dumb. So, as I say, Chibnall, spoon feed, exposition, tell rather than show. RTD, we need to protect kids from guns, sonic screwdriver looking like
everything.
Gun.
Reality.
Davros. Well, it's just Davros in his wheelchair, and I think ultimately for the Who fans, that when I watched the Davros one, I was like, what the fuck? Excuse my language. What nobody thought that Davros' wheelchair, Davros' chair was a wheelchair. I mean, the whole purpose is it's meant to be kind of the Daleks are based off him, and he was in a kind of Dalek life support system. Exactly. And the same with the sonic screwdriver. I remember when I was a kid, we used to love, waving your sonic screwdriver around, pretending you're unlocking doors and stuff. Nobody was going, get a machine, treating it like it's a machine gun. It's absolutely ludicrous. And the worst thing is the hypocrisy. Putting, what's his name in the last episode of it was Empire of Death, Lenny Rush, right?
Yes.
And shooting out of his, I don't know what they call the cycle thing that he,
scooter
thing, and then he's shooting bullets out of it, and he's a 13-year-old. I mean, it just shows that their logic and their fantasy world that they live in, it's not based in. Their argument falls flat straight away. It's like, you can't allow that and say that the sonic screwdriver now needs to look like a remote controlled on a TV. It's just, it's absolutely mental. So everything that's, when I was a kid, Davros in 2008, the sonic screwdriver, we've got to change all of that because we want to be seen as morally virtuous. All of those great things, they're making it all political about their agenda. It's disgusting, really. And I think the shocking thing for me is that RTD, I can't believe this is the same guy who wrote RTD1. It literally is like two different people. Literally. I don't know what happened to him. I know his partner died, what was it, in 2013. He's obviously on his own, clearly got too much time on his own, living in his bubble, with his, friends that all agree with the same politics. And I think over that time, he lived in the US, whatever, I think he changed. And I think he no longer prioritizes storytelling and respecting classic Who and the law. He's very much, I can do what the hell I want with and it's going to be, and it's mine, and no one can tell me any wrong. And I think ultimately that's why we are where we are. So I went on a long rant there.
No, it's fine. So I do need to just put in there as well that I do believe that Russell has a new partner now, so I don't think he's alone.
Oh right, okay.
I think so. That's what I hear because I hadn't seen him.
I've not seen
I would have seen him all the time, but I saw him about occasionally at Manchester.
Okay. Well,
I do know that he's very much he's very much involved in that side of the political issue when it comes to the TQ issue and stuff like that. And you'll all know that because, of course, we've covered it on Who's Views. He's also famous now for those rants he made at award ceremonies a few years ago. And it's obviously in the writing from the Star Beast on. But you're right, he's not the same person at all, but it is affecting the show. I was going to ask you, as somebody that you're in your late 20s and you're now approaching your 30s as well, but you mentioned all this stuff that's going on. How are you finding what's happening in society today?
Concerning, as and that'd probably be me being nice, to be honest. I think society going backwards, it's progressing. I studied history, so I'm very well aware of different struggles that we've gone through as a society, ups and downs and all. And so it's very, you can link a lot of the stuff now to communism, to what happened in the totalitarian states in the 20th century. So when you really go into it, you can spot similar patterns starting to emerge. You thought we would have learned our lessons after the atrocities of the 20th century, but I think it's very clear that, well, we haven't learned those lessons, and B, I think we've gone through an unprecedented period of peace, which in human history is a very, very unique thing. We've been very, very lucky, and I think there's a lot of complacency and a lot of taking what we have in this Western world for granted. Hating on our own society, our own history, not seeing history in a nuanced way. We're told that white people were told that they should be ashamed of their history, and you're being taught that in schools. Slavery, but people don't realize that slavery's existed not just in the transatlantic slavery, but in all parts of the world, and slavery still exists. And it was actually Britain that ended and abolished slavery. So there's a lot. I think there's a lot of simplistic thinking. People are being taught what to think, not how to think, and I think that's a massive problem.
It's a good point there, that people are being taught what to think. It's a shame that Doctor Who has fallen into that bracket now, because through the last 12 episodes, I'm going to call it, because I'm going to include the alleged specials with Tennant as well. There was an awful lot of that, isn't it? This is what we think, and this is for what you think, and we're actually seeing it in fandoms. I mean, have you noticed this change in fandom since 2017? I would say, where there's an awful lot of these people who are just being allowed to be told this is what you must think.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, my Twitter feed of Doctor Who related content since then. The what you call the Jodie boxers, they called it during the Whittaker time. If you had any kind of criticism of a story or of I guess or concerns about anything to do with that era, you're immediately vouched as a sexist kind of hater. And I think this is probably more a societal thing, and it's obviously fed into Doctor Who, and that criticism doesn't necessarily mean hate. I think was it Henry Cavill came out when a reporter said something around toxic fandom, and he said fans are entitled to criticize if they're passionate about it. If you're passionate about it, you want what's best for the show. Now, doesn't necessarily mean you have to be, everyone has to agree with you on your point, but certainly if people understand it comes from a place of love and care, criticism it's a good thing if it comes coming from a good place. It's just coming for the sake of criticizing, then I think that's slightly different. But I think again, lack of nuanced thinking. I think social media doesn't help because Twitter's not designed in that way for nuance discussion and debate.
No. Yeah.
But I think, certainly in Doctor Who, you're an you're a phobe if you have any sort of criticism or concern. I think people were right to be concerned around a female Doctor, especially having him being a male character for 50 years. You can't just change the dial and expect people just to go, yeah, we're so excited for a female Doctor. This is going to be the bestest ever kind of thing. People.
What happened?
Well, exactly. Well, yeah, and then now I think what you see on Doctor Who, you see these individuals that basically just support anything. RTD could completely ruin the character of the Doctor, which he already is making big strides to doing in the last series, and they will just lap it up because they don't really care about the character. They don't really care about Doctor Who. They care about what Doctor Who stands for them, and I think that's the issue. So I think there's fans that really care, that want Doctor Who to be good, but are right to be critical of the current era and where Doctor Who is at. And then there's fans that don't really care about Doctor Who, really, but they care about the political messages and what it stands for. And I think you got this war on Twitter, on social media between the two, and that side is never ever going to listen to this side. I will be honest, sometimes this side can get into the mode of just criticizing for criticizing's sake and not giving things a fair crack of the whip, So I think, I think that is the polarized fandom that we now live in.
It's nothing like I've ever seen in fandom. I used to like being in fandom. It's now a case where you can actually clearly see a huge divide. And if you do attend sort of like, I'm not talking about comic cons here, I'm talking about proper Doctor Who conventions that are just Doctor Who only. You can see sometimes reduced numbers, but you can also see an awful lot of people that are there because they love the show. I don't necessarily see the activists. And I've only seen that a couple of times, once in Manchester and once in the London area, where various people that I know I would not get on with or be able to tolerate were there, but they were holding court themselves, if you like, Emilio. No, they were stars and they were celebrities in their own right. Never mind the actors from the actual show from yesteryear. They were there as well. I just thought that's not fandom. This is no longer fandom. You're just there to actually, as you're saying there, represent the ideologies you believe in that have been enforced into the show. And I think it's such a shame because that's what fandom was never like that. It was always very, no matter what people say, it was always very diverse. It was always very inclusive. You were able to have rows about who was the best Doctor and still make up after it. So it's such a shame where it is now.
It's a very sad day. I remember being a kid and talking in the playground around Love and Monsters with another kid, and one of us loved it, the other one didn't, and just discussing it, and that's fine. Like, you can have a different tastes and when it comes to a Doctor Who episode, but it's not about it. The arguments are no longer about necessarily. I mean, there are a little bit storytelling, but because there is no good storytelling, the only thing to argue about is the politics that's being inserted. And I want to get back to watching Doctor Who, really captivated by the characters and the story and having a good discussion about it, not talking about the politics, which I think is just massively overshadowed the show. I think that is why the ratings are so bad. I think is that when Doctor Who came back with David Tennant and Darby, the major talking point wasn't the episode itself afterwards. It was the Doctor being lectured about pronouns, again, an assassination of the character, and clearly just hammering your audience over the head. So no wonder why between that and Bake Babies, I think was it. I know Bedwy's obviously got all of the data, and he does such a great job at analysing it. But you're looking, more than half of that audience that started Derby are all gone, and that's because. And the general audience probably watch it because all they hear is Doctor Who political, and this was the same with the Whittaker era, Doctor Who political, it's shoving agendas, and only some people can look past that, but a lot of people don't want to be bashed over the head. They want nuanced stories. You can say one side, but you also have to try and show the other side. And that's what for me, that's what captured the general audience and us fans is when Doctor Who get that balance right. And at the moment, it's completely one way, and I think that's the big issue.
I totally agree with you, and as I say, it's sad to see because I don't see it recovering. Do you?
No, I think it just dying a very slow death. If I'm honest, I think I don't see another Doctor past Shooty. Which, as I think I said on the show we did recently with the guys, is that Doctor Who needs if you really care. This is the thing: if RTD really cared about Doctor Who, he would have realised after the Chibnall era that actually what it needed was a rest, and what it needed was my generation to maybe grow up. Those who watched it in 2005 to have that 10-year or 15-year break. Let somebody else new with new ideas come to the fore. Maybe they were a fan of, like me, of the 2005 series. Maybe they were a fan of Classic Who, whatever. Or maybe they weren't a fan at all. It doesn't really matter. But they had fresh ideas. And then I could go and tell my kids in 10 years' time, yeah, come like me when come and watch Doctor Who and get them into it. And I think I think that break from Classic Who to New Who, I think you need to replicate that again. And it needs a good rep. It needs to go out of the public consciousness, and it needs to be, once something's gone, people start to miss it, and people start to realize, actually, I remember watching The Empty Child or The Doctor Dances, or Family of Blood, or Matt Smith in The 11th Hour. I really loved it back then. I miss it. You won't remember the Chibnall stuff. You won't remember the bad bits of Doctor Who. You'll end up remembering what made it great. And in 10 to 15 years time, people will be excited in the way they were excited in 2005 for it to come back. I think that's what needed. I don't think it's going to happen, because I think they'll just keep flogging this until literally it's dead on its knees, and they won't admit that it's a failure. They'll just try and put some sort of dodgy excuse out, won't they, to save themselves, when we all know it's flopped, basically.
Yeah. It's interesting what you're saying there about that whole thing about people will remember what it was like. Do you
the damage may have been done, and I think that's my concern, is that the damage may have been done. But I guess, I mean, this is I can't answer this because I wasn't around at the end of Classic Who. But I mean, did you guys feel that the damage to Doctor Who had been done in the mid to late 80s from a general audience perspective, not from a fan perspective? Did people just think, oh, the effects are bad, and the companion screamed a lot? I mean, I love the Seventh Doctor thing, but I think from a general audience's perception of Doctor Who in the late 80s, did you guys think the same thing as we think now?
It's a good question. I can only talk from my perspective, and I didn't get any of that at all. I mean, because the world was a different place then, and television was a different place. And actually, on many occasions, of course, Doctor Who was a leader, because it set the standards for many other TV shows which followed it in that genre, especially in the States. There was an awful lot that came after it. So, but here, okay, it was the butt of some derision when it was coming. It was always compared to Crossroads, which was a very cheap soap from the Midlands area, with the walls that waved and all this, wobbly walls and all this. But when you look at it, there was none of that really. That's all false. I mean, it was well produced and it was well put out there, and people worked on it very hard. I always knew, though, when it came off, that it would come back. It was just a question of when, and I always knew it was going to be huge, because there was a love for it. Around about 96, 97, when the BBC was celebrating its 60th anniversary back then, they asked the readers of Radio Times, and bearing in mind that was all done through hard copy magazines in those days because there was no internet. People had to cut this piece of paper out the Radio Times in this form and say what shows they wanted to win these BBC awards to celebrate its anniversary. And the best drama was won by Doctor Who, which had been off the air for 7-8 years at that point. And everybody, Emilio, was visibly stunned. This thing was shown on BBC One, this awards show, and it was shown. And they said, right, the best drama of 60 years for the BBC, and the EastEnders lot were getting ready to go. They were like, all right, it's going to be us. You could see various people getting ready, including Barbara Windsor, the legend, just getting ready to stand up, getting ready to put out. Oh, they were all there, getting ready to go and pick up this award. And then whoever it was read out, it's Doctor Who. And people went, and you could see the shock. But that sort of shock was with us as fans as well, because we're all like, and that for me cemented the fact this has got to come back. It also started the wheels turning in the BBC to be able to say this has to come back. We've got to do something with it. And Peter Davison and Sylvester McCoy went up to get the award, and they were like that. But it was a happy time. But that was different then, because now I think there's, I'm not sure. I mean, it's great to hear you saying that you think that people will, of your generation especially, who probably will be responsible for its return at some point.
Can I counter my own argument a little bit? I'm going to counter my own argument a little bit. I think there will be some individual maybe who just dropped out after Capaldi or whatever. Maybe didn't watch the last 7 years, where that could be exactly the case. Like they could come, they could remember the good times of Doctor Who.
That's what I was going to
ask you. Yeah, exactly. I would say for those of us that have stuck around for the last 7 or 8 years, so much has been done to butcher the history of the show, the character of the Doctor, Rogue episode, the time of children, you could go on. I think so much damage has been done to the Doctor as a character. I think for those of us who have continued, it's harder to go on a 10-year gap and not and still try and forget that, if that makes sense. It's done so much damage to the core of the show. I think it will be difficult. So I can't predict the future. I think there will be somewhere they will remember it fondly and potentially could be involved in bringing it back. But for those of us who stuck around, maybe we will all think that just the best thing for it is just to leave it be, and maybe it needs 50 years where you won't literally, then people just won't remember anything and it comes back. Whether we're around in 50 years, that's another question.
Well, I won't be, I'll tell you. I mean, it's interesting, to hear what you're saying there, because I'm currently now, where we are recording this, at the end of that awful piece of thing that they've given us over the last several weeks. I'm now firmly believed it needs to come off, and I think it's had its time. I just can't see why they would continue to churn out this nonsense. It's incredibly lazy television. It's certainly not Doctor Who that I know. It's embarrassing. So my personal opinion is take it off and let it go. Just let it go. But it was interesting to hear what you're saying there about, as I was saying there, it would in effect, theoretically, possibly be within 10, 15 years, whatever, your generation that would bring it back. And because we know people drifted away from the Chibnall era onwards, they will probably only remember those glory days that you're remembering. The whole season 4, for example, massively popular series with the British public.
Huge. I remember watching GMTV, and like you had Liz Sladen and everybody was on it, and the hype around, is the Doctor going to regenerate? And that was that was just incredible. I mean, that Doctor Who really is probably most popular, definitely in recent times. So there will be people that, and also I know a lot of my mates who, for right or wrong, they dropped out after Tennant left because he was so popular. I know Bedwyr showed it with the rating, right? That after series 4 there was a drop. There's a lot of my mates stopped watching it, but they still like, they still look fondly when I chat to them about watching Doctor Who. So again, there will be those individuals that were only tuned in the good times and may be responsible for bringing it back. You don't know.
Well, you don't, do you? You really don't know. But it gives me a little light of hope what you're saying there. Actually, that somebody sensible, a generation that is sensible, because might come back at some point in the future and say, "Well, I remember the empty child, the boy in the gas mask, or whatever, or I remember the werewolf, as you're saying there," and maybe try and shape it around that, as well as any original Who's that they've put together. Because I still can't believe that we're now on a 15th. I find that ridiculous. A 15th incarnation of the Doctor. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. My only concern, I don't want to destroy the little hope I've given you, JT. Even though I've given you it, but it's almost like I'm talking myself out again, continue talking myself out of it. I just think maybe if we were having this conversation at the end of the Whittaker era, I would say, yeah, but I think this added time of damage, and I'm going to count next season and potentially the third series as continued damage. It might be too much. It might be too much.
See what you mean.
Yeah, I think it could be the timing. If Doctor Who had gone off, which it planned to do, right at the end of the Whittaker era, she was meant to regenerate it, cut to black, and that's it. We won't know who the next Doctor is. If they just left it there, I think RTD has. He's not done what's best for Doctor Who. He's done what's best for him in coming back and basically just using Doctor Who as his vehicle for his message. And I think ultimately, whilst he was the person who brought back Doctor Who, he will definitely be the person that ends up killing it again, which I think is ironic, given the fact the fact that he started it and then will be the one that ends up finishing it again.
It's nice and neat, though, isn't it? It's a nice circle.
the life and death of modern Doctor Who.
Yeah, there's the book. There's the book. It's a very nice, because we all know as Doctor Who fans that inevitably the history volumes of our favourite show come out. I've got loads of them over there dealing with the original series, and a lot of them came along in the 90s as well, of course. And the brilliant thing about it was at that point you didn't add anything to it because it wasn't on air. So you could just write a nice overview, beginning, middle, end, that was it. Publish it. You can, when this happens again, it's going to be easy. Oh, Russell T Davies brought it back, blah 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 blah. Oh, Russell T Davies took it off. That's going to be quite tidy. All those authors out there will be going, hurry up.
Exactly, but it doesn't mean it will be, like you say, it still won't be gone forever, because it's such a unique show. There's no other show like Doctor Who, and I think in 30 years, 40 years time, if the TV landscape's right and the right individual with the right ideas, it can be brought back even with whatever damage is done over the next couple of years. So there is that hope. It depends on how quickly that happens, but certainly for the next generations, you would hope that Doctor Who doesn't die completely forever. But it will continue with us fans looking back at classic Who, and probably the only good thing RTD's done is put classic Doctor Who on BBC iPlayer, because I used to have to pay for BritBox to watch it, and now I can watch it all on iPlayer. So that's So that's like literally 99 bad things by RTD. One good thing was that. So we'll give him his little 0.1% credit that he deserves.
But the irony is, of course, it's not even his version. It's the original version, which he had nothing to do with, even though they go on, him and his friends insisting on taking original episodes and editing them, cutting them and adding things to them every left, right and center. Doesn't count. But isn't it ironic that to this day, the original series from 1963-89 is still finding that audience. It's still huge. It's still setting, I would say, the majority of Doctor Who fans to a point where they go, "Oh, this is good."
Yeah.
Do you find yourself comparing original Who to the new stuff? And if you do, what elements of the original Who do you think need to be brought into reboot Who?
I do, especially when it comes to, in particular, when I compare the character of the Doctor.
Right.
I do kind of three comparisons. I'll compare classic Who to the kind of 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th Doctor, and then I will then compare those individuals to the 13th, 15th Doctor, basically, or Whittaker and Ncuti Gatwa.
Yeah.
And I just trend how the Doctor character had changed over that time. And
Okay.
I would say the sexualization of the Doctor is the big one. I massively prefer the Doctor being asexual. I have no problem if a companion develop feeling for the
Yeah.
Doctor. Can happen. I think it has to be based in some sort of grounded reality. But a Doctor should never replicate. He certainly shouldn't go around like a loved up puppy and forget his companion for the whole bloody episode and want to get a leg over. I mean, that was just taking it to the complete extreme. So
Are you
complete.
talking about Rogue there, or
Yeah, I'm talking about Rogue in the
awful
last
episode?
series.
Yeah,
But the
awful.
seeds were sown, or the opportunity for those seeds to grow into Rogue started in 2005.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying it necessarily was an issue had it just been left at that, but it did leave the door open for the Doctor character to change and for someone to basically make a sexualized Doctor, which is what we have now. So I think that's a big one, and I'm not a fan of that whatsoever. I think the traditional masculinity in the Doctor, I will compare Classic Who to the current era. We do not have a traditional masculine Doctor. He's not stoic. He cries at everything. He's a wimp.
But you're
He
not allowed
doesn't.
to have a masculine character
You're
anymore.
not allowed to have a. I mean, the great selling point of the Doctor was, and this is what I got when I watched Tooth and Claw, and
Yeah.
when I started watching the show properly, when that he uses his brain to solve problems. He says in the episode, written by RTD, books are the greatest weapon. Great line, sums up the Doctor. That's who he is. He solves and defeats monsters not using a gun. He uses his brain and his problem solving skills. He doesn't, because we don't want a masculine strong Doctor. We can't have the Doctor use his brain anymore. You got to let the females tell him to get up, and like Mel did in the last finale, get up and get going. He's on the back of the bloody moped. In the third Doctor, he would be. Well, he jumped in lots of vehicles, but he would be the one taking the lead and saying, "I'm going to save this and solve the day." So I just think, even from a fundamental character perspective, it massively changed. But I would say New Who wasn't too far off the classic Who Doctor. Those first four Doctors were not massively far off, but even just comparing the New Who Doctor to the Shooty Whittaker Doctors is chalk and cheese. But comparing classic Who is the gap becomes even wider between the character of the Doctor in each of those series. So you start to go, this isn't Doctor Who anymore. This is somebody who referred to themselves as the Doctor, who's been played by an actor who's playing himself and not inhabiting the role. And you've got someone writing it now who, understand has watched Doctor Who as claimed to be a fan, but is not, I would say, a true fan, because he prefers his own politics over writing good stories. So yeah, I definitely compare Classic Who in those two ways. The costume, Classic and New Who got it spot on. The Doctor had one costume. It inhabits his identity, his character, or one silhouette. I mean, honestly, shooting costumes are just awful.
Yeah.
I think you could have made him a very suave Doctor. I mean, there was an image of him in a turtleneck and like a suit jacket. They could have gone for like a really cool suave Doctor, something maybe a little bit Pertwee-esque, but for modern audiences. That would have been really cool. No, instead they went with, we want to push gender pushing messages when it comes to our costume. Again, that's wrong. The only thing that still remains is the TARDIS, and thank God they've not butchered that yet, but they probably will do. They'll probably turn it into. They'll probably say the TARDIS is wrong, or it's let's make it pink, or let's put the the pride flag on the TARDIS, and
God forbid.
something like. Well,
no.
You never know. RTD's willing to change the sonic screwdriver and
Do you know,
Davros.
it's interesting though, because I have a theory of why he changed the sonic screwdriver, and again, I think it's down to the twisted policies allegedly that these people seem to uphold, and I think it's simply because, and I'm going to be very careful here in saying this, but I think it's simply because they couldn't have Mr. Gatwa as a person of color holding a pointy device.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't
That's
think
my
of it.
theory, and I think that's because that's how these people operate, isn't it?
Yeah.
We can't give you that because that's too near the knuckle, possibly, allegedly. This is how what I think they've done there, because how would that look? Because when you look at everything from the Eccleston promotion pictures from 2005 onwards, every single one of them has taken the sonic screwdriver and pointed it in there, and it's as though it's some sort of wand from Harry Potter or some sort of,
Yeah. Well, I think for me that's a writing problem. That's not the sonic screwdriver itself. It's the sonic screwdriver. I had an issue in the Matt Smith era where it became massively overused, but more like a magic wand. And I think all you needed to do, RTD, keep the sonic screwdriver as it is, but only use it as you did maybe in the first series or a couple of series where it just opened doors, which is and it does the most basic thing, just don't turn it into like it can turn, it can start, turning off Silurian's weapons and all of this kind of stuff. So
just by doing this. Of course, planning for whatever it was. But of course, I mean, the reason that will never happen again is because marketing. How many versions of the sonic screwdriver since 2005 have they sold? These licensees like Character, etc., that have made these versions. And now, of course, with this new can opener version, there's 3 coming out to start with: 1 blue, 1 red, 1 gold. Because there's been 3 versions in the show, and that's simply because marketing. Oh, if we give it a different color, we know the cosplayers will buy it. We think that the fans will buy it. I think they're going to be in for a rude awakening, because I don't think it's going
to. The activists aren't going to buy it. Let's be honest; they're least likely to buy merchandise, and the fans are not going to be buying it. I mean, look, they just honestly, the only thing that baffled me is how corporations like Disney can actually go and look at the actual sales and the data to say that the political messaging there, and they're putting in all the franchises and destroying the franchises is doing them any good on a when did the company stop thinking commercially and start thinking about politics and are happy to lose money? I mean, it's just insane. And Doctor Who will you don't see any merchandise anywhere anymore. When I was a kid, the merchandise you had behind you, and you find that in WH Smith, Woolworths. It would be everywhere. And it would. That's never. I don't think that's ever going to happen again, unfortunately.
Well, it's not going to. One reason for that, of course, is the series isn't as popular, but secondly, because unfortunately, Britain's high street is in the toilet now, and we don't have many of those shops. You just don't. I mean, nowadays we've got a couple of them, and I think that's why an awful lot of these things may be online exclusives now, or sold through specialist shops that thankfully are still around. But I don't think it's going to be. We're certainly not going to get that age that you grew up in, where you could go, because Woolworths has gone now, for example, in the UK, hasn't it?
I miss Woolworths. That was great. I mean, look, I get kind of why it fell, because it didn't adapt to the digital world, and I studied business, so I know I've actually looked into why Woolworths wasn't successful, but it didn't have an identity. It basically sold everything, right? But I also liked the fact that you go to Woolworths, you could find Doctor Who toys, you could find packed lunch boxes in the back, you could get anything. It was great. I mean, those were the days, weren't they?
And when we had Toys R Us here in the UK, when you went in 2006, 2007, they had those huge, big display areas, which was just Doctor Who, Doctor Who, Doctor Who, Doctor Who, massive pictures of the Daleks, the Cybermen, Tennant, K9, all at the top. That was for me as a fan coming from the original series and all those years off the air. I couldn't believe what was going on when I saw all this. It was absolutely, seeing the Toys R Us, seeing the Woolworths, seeing it in Tesco, seeing it in Sainsbury's, seeing it everywhere, Marks and Spencer's, everywhere. And then, of course, the lights at Blackpool again. This was, incredible time, really. But I think you're right. I don't think we're going to get that ever again. And something tells me, Emilio, that these people in control actually genuinely believe that it would.
I think they did. I think they thought they'd be able to capture America, which they I know we haven't got the data, but Doctor Who has been on the floor in America since since for a while. Actually, it kind of peaked in the kind of Matt Smith era, and I know listening to Nerd Erotic, you know, not that many people watch Doctor Who in America, so I have no idea why they. I know because of the Disney deal, but why the hell did they spend all their marketing in America, where it's going to be very difficult for them to make any headway there.
Well,
and in the UK,
funny,
I didn't see any advertisement here. The old trailer on the BBC for Doctor Who, and that was it. Whereas in 2005, the only thing I do remember is seeing the poster of the Doctor and Rose on the in London with the police box behind it, really shouting out Doctor Who, and that was not just there. It was everywhere. To say
all over the UK. Those billboards were all over the UK. I didn't see anything with Gatwa on across the UK. I believe they were in and around the London area, but I never saw anything anywhere else.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. It wasn't pushed as much, and it was an awful reliance, I think, on. Again, it comes down, I think, Emilio, to the audience we now know they wanted, because surely they were doing an awful lot of stuff on the Tube of Who and social media, possibly even Toctic, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe they were pushing it, but it didn't work, did it? And with Doctor Who, you need to bring that family audience in, but I don't think the family audience is no longer interested.
Yeah, and just to go back to your point when you mentioned around they didn't want Gatwa being black to be holding the sonic screwdriver. I just a kind of side comment that come to my mind is that, I think it's a massive disservice to the first Black Doctor to basically make him so weak. I mean, it just makes no, like, surely you'd be thinking, you know what, we want to show that in their mindset that he should be shown as equal to the other, to the white Doctors, a strong role model for black people. I'm not in that kind of mindset of you should have role models based on the color of your skin, but that's the way that these guys think.
Yeah, the minority that do, yeah,
exactly. But they think like that, so I don't know why he's made the Doctor such a weak figure. He'd not done Ncuti Gatwa any favors in that.
And he hasn't done the character any favors either, because he's really watered him down.
Exactly. He butchered it for him as an actor, and he butchered the character at the same time. That's the baffling thing for me. It's like they, even in their own ideology that they hold, that the arguments don't weigh up, but also what they're doing doesn't weigh up.
Well, you can see that in the episodes, because there's a lot of hypocrisy from the Star Beast onwards. 1 minute it's this, and then it contradicts itself, then it contradicts itself. But this is what I mean. We've talked about this in our headline shows. This happens all the time. The 1 minute they're saying this, but then they contradict themselves with the next headline. It's a shame that it's all being allowed to come in, because I've said it before, Emilio, all he had to do was write good Doctor Who. If he'd done something like he had done in 2005, but I would have said more likely in 2008, had he done something like as good and entertaining and capturing for an audience of that Tennant Tate series, this could have been a completely different story.
Well, I think he needed to I agree. I think he needed to understand where Doctor Who was at, right, after Chibnall, and he should have gone, you know what, how am I going to bring a general audience back? Okay, great, you brought David Tennant back. I can get the thinking why you've done that for the 60th anniversary special. But what he should have done is he should have gone, you know what, I'm going to tell maybe almost like a Children of Earth kind of thing. He should have told a serialized story that you don't need to be like to have any knowledge of history of. It should have been set, let's say, in the present day, right? In the UK, with a major threat. Maybe he could have used the toy maker, but made it a much more serious threat over 3 episodes. Maybe each episode was a different game the toy maker plays, and it's dark, people die, it gets people talking about it in the general audience. Oh, did you see Doctor Who? I can't believe that person died, or that kind of happened, and it's serious Doctor Who, and it's not. I would have actually maybe not brought Catherine Tate back. I would have just had David Tennant on his own, fighting a welfare problem that can immediately capture a general audience and get people talking about it. And then maybe you could end it with him regenerating, and you don't know who the next Doctor is. And then maybe immediately after, maybe a few months after that, you just, like with Christopher Eccleston, you're just thrown into this new Doctor. You don't even know, let's say, how long after Tennant it been. Maybe there's a mystery there, but just something different than what he did with the Starbeat and that. There's so much he could have done.
Totally, and didn't.
Yeah. But that's because he doesn't think what Chibnall did was wrong. He purely backed what Chibnall did. Maybe he thinks I can do politics better than the way Chibnall did it. That's how he thinks. He doesn't think this was a failure. I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it better than you, my friend Chibnall. He completely misread where Doctor Who was at, and that's why we are where we are.
Yeah, I think you've got a point. I mean, I think the whole I know I mean, I was expecting 3 episodes for the specials that were sort of like that. I really were. I thought this is going to be a big celebratory thing. Didn't get it at all. I wasn't impressed at all. Yeah. But I also think for myself as well, I didn't like that whole thing of Whittaker regenerating into Tennant. I would have just brought Tennant back as the 10th Doctor with Donna if Catherine was up for it. Yeah. From their time, unbroadcast adventures, and have them sailing off at the end of it again. You didn't need, but this is what happens when you've got fans running a show. It has to be canon. It has to be continuity. It has to all fit together to the point of you're ruining it. Because you're going paranoid, trying to make sure, well, that must fit there and that must fit there, and everything has to be explained now. I can't stand that. What's happened to the fact that the audience, the remaining fans that are watching it, can make their own ideas? Why does everything have to be explained? Why does everything have to be tied up? I can't stand it.
Actually, it's a really good point what you said about why don't you just do the 10th Doctor and just have a story we never saw that people would be easily accessible for people to just get into, even if you're a normie, and then not bring the baggage, right? Because
you never explained why the
14th Doctor had come back, and also the bi generation. That was a kid. That was just stupid and bad, but it's adding unnecessary baggage to shooting Doctor, and then you're bringing all the plot holes that come with it. Where's the 14th Doctor? Why can't he save the day? So RTD, rather than stripping things back in the way that he did with New Who, what I love with the Time War story, the emotional weight that gave, but it also kind of it kind of explained away the gap between Classic Who and New Who in a way that helped bring something else to the Doctor character.
Well, again, it showed that the Doctor had adventures in the years that we'd been away from his life.
Exactly. It's a very simplistic way of doing it, and it worked. He didn't overly bring loads of baggage to it. This time, it was already full of baggage, Doctor Who, by the time Whittaker had ended and the damage it had done, and he's just adding more baggage. It's like now the boat is the boat was already sinking, and he just added the suitcases onto it, and now the boat is literally just underwater.
Well, maybe we will get that long anticipated missing story of the Doctor and the Titanic now. Who knows what's going to happen there on that particular...
RTD's he's on there lying down and the boat sinking. Can he be saved? That's the question. Can he be saved?
Well, listen, Emilio, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here on Chit Chat. Thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed that.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed the chat. It's great to just chat everything Doctor Who. And just speak to someone who's really open to different opinions and is passionate, and we can disagree on things and we can still get on. I think that it's an old school thing. It seems like a revolutionary thing today. So really grateful for your time, JT.
No, not at all. Again, thank you. Welcome back anytime. I'm sure we will be seeing Emilio back on the channel at some point as well. Thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this little chit chat with Emilio. We could have talked for hours, but time's against us as ever. So we'll leave that there. But yeah, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. Give the video a thumbs up. Give it a like. We do appreciate that. It all helps the channel, and we appreciate your help and support on this channel. If you have already subscribed, please make sure you are still subscribed, because we have had reports that people are being unsubscribed. Nothing to do with us. Don't know what's happening there, but have a look at that. And until we see you next time on Who's Views, again, thank you, Emilio, for joining me. Lovely to see you. We will be back very, very soon with more of the usual stuff, but probably just in a different order. We'll see you again soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.